Imagine your job title is the person who wipes the king's bottom. Not metaphorically, literally. The groom of the stool was an official position in the English royal court, responsible for assisting the monarch during his most private moments, handing him items, cleaning him afterward, and managing the royal toilet chair. The twist: it was prestigious. Here's the absolutely baffling part. This was one of the most sought-after positions in the royal court, because you had guaranteed daily private access to the king, while he was completely vulnerable and in good mood. Courtiers whispered their requests into the ear of the groom of the stool, hoping he'd pass them along. Political favors were won, enemies were ruined from the royal toilet. Real example. Henry VIII's groom of the stool, Henry Norris, was one of the most powerful men in England. He survived Henry's notorious mood swings, partly because of this intimate access.
Fools! Idiots! I'll have your heads! Arg! Ah, Henry, that was exhausting.
The position was so prestigious that noblemen competed for it. When the role was eventually abolished in the 19th century, it was quietly renamed Groom of the Bedchamber, but everyone knew what it used to mean. So the next time someone tells you your job is beneath you, remind them that a Duke of England once fought other dukes for the privilege of wiping a king's backside and considered it a promotion. Kings and emperors across virtually every civilization, Egypt, Rome, China, the Ottoman Empire, medieval Europe, employed food tasters. Their one and only job was to eat the ruler's food before the ruler did, and then wait to see if they died. If not, the king ate. If yes, well, the king didn't eat that dish. The reality. Some poisons are slow-acting. Some are designed to accumulate over time. Some affect different body weights differently. A food taster who felt fine might still be delivering a slowly lethal dose to the king. And some rulers, knowing this, had multiple tasters, a taster for each course. The tasters themselves sometimes had their own tasters. It became an arms race of paranoia dressed as protocol. Real example. Halotus, the food taster of Roman Emperor Claudius in 54 AD, is one of the most famous names in ancient food tasting, because he is widely suspected of being the one who actually administered the poison that killed Claudius, not prevented it. The person meant to protect the emperor may have been the assassin. He was never punished. The new emperor, Nero, kept him on. Think about that. The job comes with free meals, close proximity to power, and a 100% chance that the one day something goes wrong, it goes very, very wrong for you specifically. Fuller, the person who stomped in human urine all day. In ancient Rome, Greece, and medieval Europe, the textile industry ran on one key ingredient for cleaning and treating cloth: human urine. Specifically, aged urine. The older the better, because it ferments into ammonia. Fullers were the workers who collected urine from public pots placed on street corners, poured it into large vats, and then stood in it, stamping and treading cloth with their bare feet for hours to clean and thicken the fabric. Public pots were placed outside Roman homes and shops, specifically for people to urinate into. Laundry businesses collected them daily. Workers stood knee-deep in fermented urine, which was warm, pungent, and chemically active, treading cloth in a process not unlike stomping grapes. The Emperor Vespasian famously taxed urine collection, and when his son complained the tax was undignified, Vespasian held a coin under his nose and said, "Money doesn't smell." Real example. Pompeii's excavations revealed multiple Phallonica fullery workshops, with large stone vats still stained from use. The Phallonica of Stephanus, discovered in the 1800s, showed a complete installation including urine collection vessels, treading vats, and drying racks. Real people worked here every day. The smell must have been extraordinary. Their neighbors presumably hated them. Next time you complain about your office job, remember, someone spent their entire career standing barefoot in other people's aged urine, and they were considered a skilled tradesperson. Knocker-up. Before mechanical alarm clocks were cheap and reliable, which was basically the entire world before the early 20th century, factory workers, miners, and dock workers needed to be woken up on time. Someone had to do it. The knocker-upper walked through the streets at 4 or 5 in the morning, tapping on bedroom windows with a long pole or shooting dried peas at the glass with a pea shooter until the person inside woke up and acknowledged them. The knocker-upper was often paid a few pence per week by each client. They had to be absolutely certain the person was awake before moving on, so they'd keep knocking until they saw movement or got a response. Which raises an obvious question: who woke up the knocker-upper? The answer: usually a different knocker-upper. There were knocker-uppers all the way down. Real example: Mary Smith of Shoreditch, London, was a famous knocker-upper in the early 1900s who used a pea shooter to ping dried peas against upstairs windows. She was doing this job into the 1930s, well after alarm clocks existed, because some clients simply preferred her. This job only died out because of cheap mass-produced alarm clocks, which means that every time you hit snooze, you are personally ending someone's career. You are the reason the knocker-upper is gone. Water carrier. In ancient Rome, medieval cities, and across the ancient world, there were no taps. Water had to come from somewhere. A river, a well, a public fountain, and it had to get to where people were. The water carrier, or aguador in Spanish cities, was the person who physically transported water from the source to homes, businesses, and palaces all day long, every day, in heavy clay pots or leather skins. The physical reality. A clay water jug held roughly 20 kilograms of water. A water carrier might do 20 to 40 trips per day across a city's uneven, unpaved streets. They developed distinctive postures, stooped, asymmetric, with permanent calluses and often spinal problems. In medieval Cairo, specialized water carriers called sakas filled cisterns for the wealthy and mosques for worshippers. In ancient Rome, private water delivery was a mark of wealth. Real example. Francisco de Goya painted The Water Carrier in 1808 to 1812, a portrait of a young woman carrying a heavy pot in wartime Madrid. The painting captures the weight and exhaustion of the job. In the same city, sakas were so important that they organized into guilds and had their own patron saints. The person who brought water was not nobody. They were essential infrastructure on 2 legs. You turn on a tap without thinking. The entire civilization of Rome, one of the greatest in history, ran on the back muscles of people doing what your plumbing does now. The tap is a miracle we never notice. Mourner. Crying for stranger, funeral for money. In ancient Egypt, Rome, China, and across the Middle East, wealthy families hired professional mourners for funerals. These were people, usually women, paid to weep, wail, tear their hair, beat their chests, and perform extreme public grief at the funeral of someone they had never met. The louder and more dramatic, the higher the status it implied for the deceased. The social logic. In these cultures, a funeral with few mourners was a social catastrophe. It implied the person had no friends, no status, no legacy. A wealthy family could not risk a quiet send-off. Professional mourners guaranteed spectacle. Some were extraordinarily skilled performers who could produce genuine-sounding wails and tears on command. They were reviewed, recommended, and hired based on their performances the way actors might be reviewed today. Egyptian tomb paintings at Thebes and elsewhere show rows of women in specific mourning postures. Hands raised, heads thrown back, robes disheveled. Scholars believe these depict a mix of genuine family members and hired mourners. The profession is explicitly described in ancient papyri as a paid role with established rates. Roman author Seneca complained about the noise professional mourners made at funerals, suggesting they were very good at their jobs. Professional mourning companies still exist today in China, India, and Ghana. You can book them on apps. The job that started in ancient Egypt is available for download. Some things never change. Human breaking news alert. Before newspapers, before radio, before any form of mass communication, if you needed the public to know something, you sent a man into the street to shout it. The town crier walked prescribed routes through the town, ringing a bell to get attention, and then reading out official proclamations, news, legal notices, and royal decrees at full volume. Literacy rates were often below 30%. The town crier was the only way most people received information. Town criers had to have specific qualities: a powerful voice that could carry across a crowded marketplace, perfect memory for long proclamations. They were royal officers. Harming a town crier was considered an attack on the crown itself. The phrase, "don't shoot the messenger," may have literal origins in the protected status of royal messengers and criers. Town criers covered different districts and often competed for choice routes that passed the most busy markets. They were paid per proclamation by whoever needed information spread. A wealthy merchant could hire the crier to announce a sale. The king could commandeer all criers for a royal proclamation. The crier who got the route past the Cheapside market was effectively the city's most influential broadcaster. The town crier was replaced by the printing press, then the newspaper, then the radio, then television, then social media. Each step made information faster and cheaper. The end result is that everyone is now their own town crier, shouting into a global marketplace, and somehow this has made us less informed. Progress. Every weird, gross, or absurd job in this video disappeared the moment someone invented a better solution, which means that right now, some of the jobs that seem completely normal and permanent will look just as strange to people in 100 years. What do you think disappears next? Drop it in the comments. If this video made your job feel slightly better or significantly worse, smash the like button and subscribe.